Hey folks, this is Anatoly. You're listening to a Solana Fireside chat with an awesome guest, Sergey, co-founder of Chainlink. Awesome for you to be here.
Thanks for having me. Always great to chat with you.
Cool. So this is an open kind of conversation. We get to talk about Solana and Chainlink and where, both of us kind of think DeFi is heading over the next year. Um, so, you know, since you're a guest, I'll have you ask the first question.
Great. Sounds good. So Anatoly, I've always been really impressed, with what you guys have built at Solana. But one of the open questions I've had is, what are your thoughts on what makes Solana unique for building next generation DeFi smart contracts?
This is like something that we set out, building really from the first days. Solana was called blockchain and Nasdaq speed. And at that time, nobody really called it DeFi because the main protocols that were doing trading were like Ether Delta and then 0x came into existence. Um, and what Solana is optimized for is maximizing the censorship resistance in real time, the actual number of nodes that transmit information, as many of those as we can get, and reducing the latency and the cost of how that information is transmitted. And when you combine those two things, you end up with a system where you have this information symmetry around the world. And that what that really means is that you have free access to markets and price data and state and prices and bids and asks and all the stuff that traders want to do, as free and as open and as cheap as possible. So this is what I think makes Solana unique. And we've seen proof points of that with things like Serum, which is a central limit order book running as a smart contract. But now over the last year, we've seen a bunch of proof points, with projects like Mega Markets, like Jet, like Saber, like gaining real DeFi traction. So pretty excited about like everything that's being built around DeFi and Solana.
Yeah, makes sense.
So Chainlink, I think, is the fundamental engine that powers a lot of Ethereum DeFi. How do you think Chainlink price feeds able to power the next generation of DeFi and Solana?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we power a lot of DeFi on many different environments. Right now, we secure anywhere from 50 to over 70 billion, depending on the day, and that's rapidly growing. And the reason for that is both the security track record of the Chainlink networks, which have never been breached by an adversary, and the quality of the data. I think what Solana presents is a unique kind of scalability and high frequency updating kind of both opportunity and challenge. At this point, we're very far along and already on testnet have sub-second updates for various data sources. So part of the reason many people use us in DeFi is because the consensus method and all the various kind of security benefits that Chainlink provides have allowed it to remain resistant to various attacks like flash loan attacks and even other things like faulty data. So I think there's a measure of how do you generate reliable consensus about data. Then there's a question of how do you get the best data sources, and Chainlink has the largest collection of market data sources that provide information at sub-second speeds into various blockchains. And we've already been able to get that data into Solana at sub-second speeds. So the only next steps are really making sure that everyone knows about that and has an ability to use both the market data and all the other data that's not about markets and the random number generator and so on. I think at the end of the day, it'll come down to the security created by the consensus around the data and the quality and speed of the data being updated, which after a certain period of investigation and security auditing, we know that we can very securely provide at sub-second speeds and are already doing in pretty large amounts on testnet and with a few other users. So generally speaking, I think it's all very much on track.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, it's a lot of progress. It takes a lot of kind of effort and diligence around security, but I think we've gotten it right at this point. In terms of what you're seeing in the Solana ecosystem, what are some of the novel smart contract apps that you feel are currently being built on Solana?
So just like kind of as you described, it takes a lot of engineering effort and challenges to go from something that is on the order of tens of seconds to sub 1 second. And the novelty in Solana, a lot of the applications that you look at, like mega markets or Jet Protocol, may look and feel in some ways from a high level point of view as what you see on Ethereum. But a lot of engineering effort went into making these work at sub-second speeds, dealing with spot markets running in the same chain, plus dealing with liquidations and everything else. Like that engineering effort in itself, I mean, me as an engineer, I always look at it as a marvel, right? A lot of effort went into making these systems work and proving them out. So that to me is like one of the most exciting things. Is I think what we see are smart contract applications that are being built now at the kind of level of performance and throughput and cost that Web2 users are used to. And this allows DeFi to kind of start penetrating into places that is pretty hard for it. So like things like Star Atlas is just a space video game, right? But it's pretty cool that it can use something like a Serum market or Mango markets with liquidations and borrow lending to manage the in-game currencies, in-game assets, because it's so cheap and fast that Web2 users that are playing this game don't feel that like, weird negative user experiences that you do on some slower chains. So this is like, is that novel? I think it is novel from an extremely like interesting angle, because it allows the monetization of Web3 without use of advertisement or stealing people's data. It is a stack, right? That is a web stack that platforms and producers and like people and communities can monetize and like create content that actually has value, that doesn't include ad exchanges or stealing people's data. And that is kind of going to end up being a seismic shift from Web 2 to Web 3. So I'm pretty excited to see like these early inklings of that happening already.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think from a user experience point of view, sub-second, Web 2.0 speed is something blockchains haven't had before, and the ability to create a user experience around that is going to make it a much more seamless transition. So I completely agree with you on that.
So a lot of these new applications are not market specific, right? Or maybe not even trading specific. How else can Chainlink decentralized services extend the capabilities of Solana apps?
Yeah, sure. So there's actually a lot of different Oracle networks. We're past 700 Oracle networks now. I think we're going to be probably at 1,000 this year and thousands next year. And each of those Oracle networks provides a distinct singular kind of service. Many of those are around market data and price data and so on, but a lot of them are actually for other types of data. So whether that's weather data for decentralized crop insurance, or whether it's sports results, or any number of other data sets. For example, relatively recently, we had the Associated Press announced launching an official Chainlink node, which will allow them to put inflation indicators, economic indicators, sports indicators, and election results on chain, which is obviously important for prediction markets and various other implementations. So generally speaking, I think there's an entire long tail of data that isn't market data that gives rise to entirely new use cases. And the funny thing is, creating this long tail is essentially solving a lot of small chicken and egg problems, right? Because until you have the data, you can't build that smart contract use case. And once you do build it, somebody becomes successful making it, and then other people build similar use cases. And then that creates a kind of virtuous cycle where there's an entire market appearing for getting that data from the world, which is kind of what happened with DeFi, right? DeFi was a thing where there wasn't data on chain appeared, and then DeFi began to grow and grow and grow, and continues to grow into a larger and larger market at the rate that data can be put there. Beyond data, there's the verifiable randomness function. So the ability to get randomness in a verifiable way, I think is very important for a lot of the games that you mentioned. And then the other services are things like Keepers and CCIP. So Keepers is actually a DevOps automation tool that does things like start and stop contracts and verifies various on-chain and off-chain conditions. So it's almost like a trust minimized DevOps or off-chain compute tool. And then CCIP, the cross-chain interoperability protocol, I think is going to be very useful for Solana applications that are running at sub-second speeds to actually be able to utilize contracts on other chains for various useful services, transactions, taking value from users into Solana DApps or paying out yield back onto the chain where for whatever reason that's where the user happens to have certain amounts of their value. And our work on CCIP is actually going to be, I think, important for the whole industry because I think we're going to go from a world where we have single chain applications or single chain applications using multiple Oracle networks to a world where the architecture of what defines a smart contract is going to be multiple contracts on a main chain where people want that contract to operate. And then there are going to be a lot of off-chain services in the forms of Oracle networks for data, for randomness, for keepers. And then you're actually going to have a cross-chain component to use other contracts on other chains as well. And so that's the architecture that I see us getting to. And we actually already have multiple DeFi applications using us to both, start and stop a game, use randomness in that game, and get data into that game, right? So you actually have already multiple applications in DeFi and outside of DeFi using us or using the Chainlink networks for multiple different networks for multiple different services. And so that's the architecture I see evolving in Solana. And due to the sub-second speeds, I can see a lot of applications choosing to make Solana the place where a lot of the core logic is processed.
That's awesome. And that sounds like a really exciting future. And the idea of like cross-chain simultaneous data availability from is a pretty wild one. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So what do you think are some of the proof points that you will see in DeFi going mainstream? Like, what does it mean for DeFi to actually become widely adopted in your mind?
Yeah, so I think I'm seeing basically three important things. The first thing that I'm seeing is inflation. So inflation is continuing to grow, and that's continuing to ask people to reevaluate their relationship with existing institutions and existing financial systems. And as inflation continues to grow, I think it's going to create a lot of concern and a lot of doubt about how the traditional financial system works. The second thing is I fully expect to see multiple Robinhoods or things like Robinhood continue to happen. Trading halts, Evergrande debt insolvency issues, Wirecard payment fraud schemes, and so on. And with each of those, you'll actually see a greater and greater influx of people from that industry or vertical. So Robinhood was actually really the first time I saw people come into the blockchain industry after being here for over 10 years, that people weren't coming for the purposes of getting a token. They were coming to use an alternative to how the traditional financial system worked in a certain specific way in this decentralized DeFi format. And so I think as there's more Evergrandes, Robinhoods, or Wirecards, or so on, specific verticals will have people flow into the decentralized blockchain ecosystem to use the infrastructure. And then the third thing I think is just yield. So I really don't know where you can get better yield right now on the whole planet. And I think inflation and just the fact that there's good yield is something that is extremely attractive. I keep seeing people try to package it in all kinds of ways, and they're getting better at packaging it and providing it to people. And I think the ability to package 8% on the US dollar is very attractive, right? So, the ability to package that is secondary to the fact that you can actually get the 8% or the 7% or the 5%. So I think those three factors, even sometimes working together, will seriously accelerate the move to DeFi. And I already see that happening on a pretty regular basis. But what are your thoughts? What do you think are the proof points accelerating DeFi going mainstream?
You covered a ton of the ones that I've been thinking of too, but I think it's really understated how explosive a really well packaged consumer application that has self-custody plus DeFi yields for the US dollar. not even in just the US, but this could be like a really global turning point that could flood in a lot of users into DeFi. So to me, that's like one of the most exciting aspects of the next year, because it really feels like all the tools are there. We have good UX for, I think, signing at this point, and pretty good UX for key recovery and management, but also have these like amazing platforms that do have these crazy returns, or not crazy, but realistic returns. This is what people should be getting from their dollars if there weren't a bunch of middlemen all taking a small bite, in the traditional banking system. So this is a pretty huge proof point, but I would like to see 100 million people within a year actually self custody getting DeFi yields, and I think it's possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's completely possible because the fundamental economics are there, and there's going to be more and more stuff that asks people to question the status quo, right? So when everything's fine in the status quo, everybody's just like oblivious and they don't need to look for alternatives. But between the status quo going sideways and there being a better alternative, I think those two things together do convert those couple of 100 million people into even the most basic use case, which fascinating enough, once again, it isn't buy a token, sell a token, right? It's get an existing currency, turn it into something that goes into a financial product and get better yield than what the global financial system gives me. And that's pretty amazing that our industry, or the DeFi industry, can do that after only really being in existence for a few years. That's a pretty serious achievement for anything that exists for only a few years.
Agreed. Yeah. I'm excited. So, well, I mean, what do you think is going to be the most exciting trend in 2022?
I think these things are really, really difficult to predict because, NFTs kind of, captured the public consciousness in a way that a lot of people didn't necessarily see coming. I think the thing that I expect to happen in 2022 are really two things. I expect a number of enterprises and banks and various existing players to not want to lose their relationship with customers and users and institutional clients. And I expect a number of things to go live around, hey, get DeFi returns through your bank, or hey, buy NFTs through some existing marketplace or some existing universe of Web 2.0 tools, or something like that. Because I see more and more people, I think PayPal really kicked this off. Is once PayPal started allowing people to buy crypto, you really just had a kind of shot fired in the air where if PayPal has done this research and decided to allow this type of Web 2.0 interaction with crypto, why on earth do you think your users won't come to you and also won't want to interact with custody or DeFi or so on? And then I think the second thing that'll happen is there will be a flow of various collateral on chain. So I think there will be kind of premiums from insurance products, all kinds of collateral, whether that's invoice refactoring or for trade finance, or whether that's insurance cash flows from parametric insurance. I think the world is going to eventually, and probably in 2022, realize that there's this big market called DeFi. And if you sell them your cash flows and your collateral, they'll gladly buy it at a premium for diversification reasons, right? So everybody in DeFi who's making a stable coin, who's making whatever system, they don't need 50 more coins to put into their thing. They need collateral that is from invoice refactoring, or from the cash flows of an insurance product, or some kind of real world real estate asset that's been tokenized, or a gold asset or something, right? And I think once that happens, you're actually going to be able to compose a lot of different assets into really, really stable baskets of things in a very fast, transparent, and reliable way. And it's going to be much faster and actually much more consumable and usable than what banks do, right? Because for banks to compose some kind of basket of assets into a product or into something takes a ton of time. It takes a ton of effort. It takes a ton of relationship building, a ton of steps. And here you'll just have like, hey, I'm going to take the insurance cash flows. I'm going to take the NFTs. I'm going to take, the invoice refactoring revenues. and I'm gonna make a market out of that, or I'm gonna make some kind of financial product out of that. And I think when everything starts touching the real world in that way from this industry, things are going to take on a very, very different tone, because fundamentally all of these real world industries, they need a market. They need a place to sell their cash flows. They need a place to sell their collateral. And if the global financial system, the centralized one, isn't serving that need, something will serve that need. And I think the permissionless and open source and fast pace of iteration in this industry will lead it to serve that need. And that's a very big need. There's a lot of people that have cash flows, have collateral, have all kinds of things that they want to put into a market, but that it's too cumbersome and too burdensome to put into centralized current markets. And so that's I think the next big thing where DeFi just starts to touch a ton of industries as essentially like the revenue generator of those industries, which is very, very impactful, and is gonna change how people see this global market called DeFi.
That's an awesome vision. I couldn't, I couldn't agree more with you. So really awesome for you to join on this Fireside chat. So thank you for being here, and really excited for Solana and Chainlink to work together and building this.
Yeah, so am I. Thank you for having me, and as always, it's a real pleasure to chat with you.